Hi, this is Andy McCluskey from the band Orchestral Manoeuvres in the Dark.
If you leave, I won't cry. I won't waste one single day. But if you leave, don't look back.
And you're listening to the New Wave Podcast.
You're tuned into the New Wave Music Podcast, your go-to destination for exclusive interviews, album reviews, and the latest music news. And now, here's your host, Steve.
Joining me today is one of the true pioneers of electronic music. As a singer, songwriter, producer, composer, and technology innovator, Thomas Dolby helped redefine what pop music could sound like in the 1980s. His groundbreaking blend of synthesizers, storytelling, and inventive production produced timeless songs like She Blinded Me with Science, Hyperactive, and Europa and the Pirate Twins. Thomas has been a guest on the New Wave Music Podcast before. We took a deep dive into his remarkable career, his creative journey, and the innovations that have made him one of music's true visionaries. If you haven't heard that conversation yet, I highly recommend going back and checking out that episode. But today we're turning our attention to the present. Thomas is one of the headliners of this summer's Totally Tubular Festival, celebrating some of the most iconic music of the 1980s. It's a real pleasure to welcome you back to the New Wave Music Podcast, Thomas.
Very nice to be here.
You're headlining the Totally Tubular 80s Festival this year. What made you want to be a part of this celebration of 80s music?
So 2 years ago, when the Totally Tubular Festival started, I was on that tour playing solo and had a great time with a bunch of other bands. They asked me to come back this year, and I thought, well, I don't want to do the same thing again, but I had this crazy idea. In 1986, when I first moved to the USA, I formed a band called Lost Toy People, and we played in clubs up and down the West Coast, and then went in a studio and recorded an album called Aliens Ate My Buick, which is still revered by sound engineers and audiophiles today for its production, which is co-produced by Bill Wittrell. And I decided to reform the Lost Toy People and bring them out on the road for this year's Totally Tubular Festival and play Aliens Ate My Buick, play the album in full. And so that's what we've been doing, and it's been a blast.
Definitely looking forward to hearing that. Now, the lineup is also packed with artists who helped define the decade. What's it like sharing the stage with so many of your peers again? And does it feel like a reunion or maybe something completely new?
The funny thing is that during the 80s, during the so-called British invasion, we were all quite snooty to each other. But I think as you get older and wiser, you realize, we're very privileged to be still out here, playing the music that we love and getting paid for it. And that's really because of the fans. It's because of the fans' willingness to buy the tickets and go and relive their past and see how we're coping with the advancing years. And we have a great time backstage. It's it's a party. It's not a party like the old days of trashing the hotel rooms and keeping the hotel bar open all night. People have their spouses, their other halves, their kids, their nannies, their personal trainers, their cardiologists, and nobody's going to be up all night partying because you've got to be awake at 7 a.m. to meet with your Pilates instructor.
So looking back, did you ever imagine that music from the 80s would still be filling amphitheaters and festivals more than 4 decades later?
Well, not really, because it's not like, 40s music was popular when I was young. It's really, I think, a testament to the sort of richness and diversity of the musical decade that our music is still being enjoyed by fans today. Not only fans that were around then, but actually younger fans as well. You see a lot of people in their 20s. Some of them, were brought up on our music. And some of them have discovered it from scratch. I think the vinyl craze has had a lot to do with that. People are discovering what some of the great sounds and production styles were from the 80s, and also it was a very sort of unexpected decade from in terms of musical styles, and I think a lot of that was down to the fact that when MTV came along, if you had a great video, as I did, then you would get it on MTV, and it was so influential, in the early to mid '80s. People would get hooked on a song and then they'd call their local radio stations to request it. So suddenly radio was having to follow MTV's playlist format, breaking away from the sort of rigidity of, the programming genres that, sort of settled in by the end of the '70s. So I think, that's a lot of the reason that, there were so many really vastly different styles were breaking through in the early 1980s.
So, how does the energy of this outdoor festival compare to performing how you did on your own headlining shows a year ago?
Yeah, I mean, it's really good. I think it's a big ask, especially in the temperatures we've been having across North America. To have people sort of, be outside in the heat to see 6 or 7 bands during the course of the day. By the time it gets to me coming on stage, quite often late at night, and people are getting a bit, drained of energy. But the vibe has been really good, and people are just having such a good time, really, sort of leaning into the music they grew up with, young and old.
So, you kind of touched on this earlier, but there are fans attending the Totally Tubular Festival that range from people who grew up with your music to younger listeners discovering it for the first time. How do you approach creating a set list that appeals to both audiences?
In my case, my goal was to play the Aliens Ate My Buick album in full. It's sort of an outlier in many ways in my, canon of sort of only 4 or 5 solo albums over the course of all these decades, because it's a very outgoing album. A lot of my stuff is actually quite introspective, believe it or not. I'm known for songs like She Blinded Me with Science and Hyperactive that are definitely sort of screaming exhibitionism. But the deep cuts on my albums, things like I Love You Goodbye.
Some words are sad to say, some leave me tongue-tied. But the hardest thing to tell you, the hardest words I know, are I love you, goodbye. I love you, goodbye.
Or Screen Kiss.
Screen kiss, one screen kiss, straight from a film. I forget who was in. Screen kiss, one screen kiss, blue filter lens, and a pull up Vaseline. But all the Russians look the same. Only there's a movie I wouldn't pay to see again.
Or Airwaves. Are the ones that are really adulated by fans. So Aliens at My Buick, which is funky, good time party music, is a little bit like Marmite. You either love it or you hate it. But I look out there and a lot of people know all the words to the songs, and that's very gratifying.
But one of the things that makes this tour, the Totally Tubular Festival, special is the nostalgia. But it also reminds everybody of how innovative the music was. When you look back, what do you think made the '80s such a creatively exciting period?
I think the MTV slash radio crossover slash clubs as well was really coming into play. And then from a technology standpoint, for the first time, synthesizers and drum machines were becoming part of the whole toolbox, of rock and roll musicians. Infused with the energy that the punk movement had brought in the UK and the USA. So suddenly there was a much wider range of music was possible, and yet there are only a handful of bands that were signed to major labels. It wasn't like today when you get 10,000 new tracks a day uploaded to Spotify. So between those limited rosters on the major labels, there was really a huge diversity of different styles of music, and that made it a very exciting and innovative time.
Well, Thomas, you've always been viewed as someone who pushed technology forward in music. Looking at today's tools that are available, such as AI, software, instruments, and home studios, what excites you the most, and what do you think we've lost along the way?
Yeah, with any big technology breakthrough, there's always a lot of backlash and sort of pushback. People saying, "Oh, it's going to, cost us our jobs," or they're cutting down the rainforests, or the billionaires want to own even more of us than they already do, and all of that. Those are legitimate fears. I think in proportion to the opportunity and possibilities of AI and deep learning. From a creative standpoint, I've always been a glass half full kind of guy. And so whenever a new technology comes along that can affect the way that I create and the way that I make music, I always dive in headlong, throw away the user manual and just come up with my own ways to use it. And I love to be one of the people to show the world what you can do with it. I use AI actually in my music a lot, not to, mash up Taylor Swift with Snoop Dogg, but really as a way to interact with technology. And I'll sort of explain why. It's like in the early days when I went into a recording studio, there was a sound engineer there. So if I said, I need that guitar sound to be a little bit more glittery, the engineer would think, let me try adding 6K at 5 kilohertz, 6 dB. But I don't know what those knobs mean, right? But he'd do it. And then I'd say, no, maybe not glittery, maybe a bit more shimmery. And then he'd reach for a patch chord and try something else. And he goes, what do you think of that? I go, yeah, more like that. And that's the way that you interact with AI, right? You say, no, a bit not shiny, a bit more shimmery than shiny. And the AI says, what do you think of this? And you go, yeah, let's go with that. Versus putting a recording studio on a laptop and saying, okay, now you can go to Starbucks and make your album and get it up on SoundCloud. To do that, you have to know the whole sound engineering side as well, which a lot of artists don't. So AI has the possibility of allowing us to get creative without flip-flopping between your left brain and your right brain.
Going back to your live shows, they've always blended musicianship, storytelling, and technology. How has your performance, would you say, evolved over the years?
Well, there's not a lot of time for storytelling on this tour because I'm doing like a 45-minute set, so we have to sort of blast through it. Yeah, it's like it's been a while since I had to be a front man like this, sort of running around, like waving the mic stand and things. So it's interesting to relive that a little bit because I haven't had like a sort of funky live band in a long time. It's always been a little bit more sort of static and a bit more thoughtful. So I'm really enjoying that. I mean, it's hard, in your late 60s to keep up that energy. So I'm kind of grateful that the set's only 45 minutes.
So I have to ask, are there any songs in your catalog that maybe have taken on a completely different meaning when you perform them today versus when you first wrote them?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I love everything I've done. I have very little regret. I don't have vaults of unreleased material like, Prince did or someone like that. I've never been a prolific songwriter. In fact, almost every song I've ever written, you can hear on one of my 4 or 5 albums. So it's a total, maybe 100 songs versus in the thousands for many artists. I love doing the more gentle songs. There's a song called My Brain Is Like a Sieve from the Aliens Ate My Buick album.
My brain is like a sieve. Sometimes it's easier to forget all the bad things you did to me. You
when I wrote that originally, it has a sort of slow reggae-ish lilt to it. And when I wrote that originally, it was kind of regretful about, a relationship that had broken up. But these days, when I sing "My Brain Is Like a Sieve," it's usually because I can't remember the name of that actor that was in that movie. Oh, you know the way it's called. I tend to be very forgetful, like most of us do, and so "My Brain Is Like a Sieve" has definitely taken on new meaning.
Well, I do have to say that your songs from your catalog have definitely stood the test of time and continue to resonate with new generations. Why do you think that your music still connects with audiences more than 40 years after it was first released?
I never really followed trends, so you can certainly associate me with the sort of MTV era, and yet my songs don't really sound like anybody else's. I mean, a lot of my contemporaries have a different set of influences, different set of sensibilities. So my sound is not really synonymous with a trend. And when you have a trend, it can get very popular and peak and then sort of fall away and sound very dated. I was always an outlier. I was always very marginal in terms of the styles and the musical idioms that I pursued. So I think, if anything, that's the reason that my songs have stood the test of time.
So you've worked with an incredible range of artists throughout your career. Is there a collaboration that had a bigger impact on you than people might realize?
I think I think playing with David Bowie at Live Aid was a pivotal moment in my career. I'd grown up with his music, not only his music, but I mean his lyrics, his styles, the changes he went through, and so it sort of brought my life full circle to be, honored by uh, getting to play with him at Live Aid in 1985, and I think that, two of the biggest influences on my music have been Bowie and Prince. They both died in the same year. And although that made me incredibly sad and grief stricken at the time, I sort of realized that in a way now it's up to the rest of us. So we've got to keep pushing forward, fighting the good fight and making great music.
Well, Thomas, there's one question I like to ask every artist that I interview, and it's every artist accumulates incredible stories over the years. What's one memory from the road, the studio, or backstage that fans would be surprised to hear about?
So in 1989, I performed The Wall in Berlin with Roger Waters, and I played the part of the crazy Scottish teacher. And to do this, I had to wear a puppet suit with 12-foot long arms and legs. And I was wearing a mountaineering harness and wires that went up over the top of the wall and down the other side on a pulley to a bag of sand that was 5 pounds lighter than I was. And I had to climb into this suit like I was getting into a sleeping bag, while abseilers in heavy jack boots were scaling down the wall all around me. And then suddenly, when my cue came, they grabbed that sandbag, and I was instantaneously shot 60 feet up the wall, and I was screaming at the top of my voice in a Glaswegian accent, looking out at 350,000 people at the Potsdamer Platz, um, and seeing Roger Waters and the band way below me. So I think that was a very key memory for me in my entire performing career.
Another question that when fans leave a Thomas Dolby performance at the Totally Tubular Festival this summer, what do you hope they're talking about on the drive home?
About how different it was and about how high the energy was. We're not using stems, we're not using any additional tracks or samples or anything like that. It's all live. We've got brass, we've got percussion, backing vocals, trombone, soloist, live drummer. And this is not the way bands like mine tend to do festivals these days. There's increasing dependency on using stems and backing tracks. So it's truly live, and so it'll give you a taste of the flavor of live music from back in the 80s. So I would hope that that's what fans are commenting on.
So looking ahead after the Totally Tubular Festival wraps up, what's next for you? Are there any projects or plans that you'd like to have fans keep an eye on?
You know, I'm a professor of music at Johns Hopkins University at the Peabody Conservatory. And as soon as this tour is finished, I go back to teaching every week. So I'll be lecturing about film and video game music composition within a couple of weeks of finishing the end of this tour.
This is kind of like your little summer break before Professor Dolby returns back to the class.
Yeah, and it's always mind blowing to my students that Professor Dolby, was out there treading the boards, looking like a rock star only recently. I think many of them only went there because their dad said, if I want to blow a small fortune on a music degree for you, you got to study under Dolby. And they go, okay, Dad, who?
Well, Thomas, my last question is finally, what would you like to say to fans who are coming to see you on the Totally Tubular Festival this summer?
Well, I'm so grateful, number one, that I still get to do this stuff age 67. And the reaction from the audiences so far in the Totally Tubular Festival has been really warm, really great spirit, people singing along, clapping along. And I want to thank them for coming. I want more of them to come and everybody to get to see it, because this might be the one and only tour where you get to see Lost Toy People perform Aliens Ate My Buick.
Well, Thomas, it's always a pleasure having you on the New Wave Music Podcast. Thanks so much for taking the time to join me today and giving our listeners a preview of what they can expect from the Totally Tubular Festival. And hopefully we'll have the opportunity to catch up with you again down the road.
That would be great, Steve. Thanks so much. And if you go to thomasdolby.com, you can see all the tour dates.
Once again, big thank you for Thomas Dolby for taking time out of his day to join us here on the New Wave Music Podcast. Looking ahead to our next episode, Dawn will be back here in the studio with me, and we're going to be taking a deep dive into the newest albums from Haircut 100 and Midjur. As always, we hope you join us. If this is your first time listening, we thank you and ask that you please subscribe. That's a great way to support us. And if you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to leave us a 5-star review. You can find us on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Just search for New Wave Music Podcast. We'll catch you on the next episode.